Hey guys, I got another fascinating endgame for you. It's white to play and win. Black's pawns are going down the board in this direction. What do you think the best move for white is in this position? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the best move is king to g5. Now, the point here is pretty obvious. We want to start using our king and bring it towards the action here where these pawns are going. And one thing to keep in mind is that if we are able to capture both of these pawns and don't lose a knight or our bishop, we will win. Okay, you can always checkmate with the bishop and a knight and a king against a king. It's a little bit tricky, but you can do it. I'll link a video in the description below if you want to see the process for doing that. However, the problem is that Black has these pawns, and how do we deal with those pawns without losing one of our pieces? That's really the tricky part of this puzzle. So Black can try a couple of different things. The main line is c3. It's more tricky, it gives white more problems. But real quickly, if they do play b3, an example of how we could win this would be just to keep bringing our king forward. If they try to push this pawn, we blockade it with the bishop. If they try to push this one, we can do something like bring the bishop back, bring the knight check, and then go here. And once you get this blockade, the pawns can never move forward. If they do, you just take it. The king can never come around because the bishop, stops it from coming in. So that's kind of one example. There could be other ways that this plays out, but you can play around with it and you'll see that white's going to be able to win in the cases where Black plays the move b3. However, the main line, c3, is much more tricky, like I mentioned. In this case, we have to play the move knight to d3 check. We're attacking the king, we're threatening to take this pawn, and so Black has to defend the pawn, which only gives him two options. This one makes a lot more sense, putting pressure on the knight, moving down the board to help escort the pawns. And now we play the move knight to c1. And what we are doing is trying to create a little blockade here to not let Black's king in and prevent them from pushing the pawn, because if they push the pawn here, what move would we play? Well, if you said bishop to e6 check, you would be correct. We go check, we take this guy, and now Black is running out of tricks. I guess you could say they could try king to a3, but we have a couple of different ways that we could win. Just by moving the bishop away would do it, and when the king comes in, knight to d3 check, and let's just say the king moves here, we can line up the bishop, and if they ever push this, we simply move, it's pinned, and we take the pawn. Okay, so that's a nice little idea to keep in mind. So that's kind of what our plan is by going here, knight to c1. However, Black doesn't play b3, they play the move c2. And what they are doing by playing c2 is opening up this square to create threats with the king. So what do we need to do? Well, we bring the king closer, and now Black has a couple of ways that they could play this. The main line is actually that they push the pawn with b3. Real quickly, if they did play king to c3, we would simply bring our king closer, and even though they can try to come in and attack our knight, we're just in time to defend the knight, and with the bishop's help, we're going to be able to mop up the pawns, and Black can't do anything. Okay? However, Black plays the move b3. So now I'd like you to pause. What do you think we should play here? All right, well, if you said bishop to e6 check, you are correct. That is the move. And then Black plays the move king to c3. And again, I would like you to pause. What should we play here as white? All right, well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of you guys said take this with the bishop or the knight. And if you said either of those moves, you would be wrong. Those are actually not the way that you win. And it's pretty funny because that's what I said earlier, like we wanted to be able to do this, right? What's the difference now? If we take this with the bishop now, Black has the move king to b2, and it's actually a fork on our pieces. And if we want to save the knight, we have to move the knight. But as soon as we move it, it's no longer defending the bishop, and then the king takes it. And if we don't move it, then he just takes our knight until we actually lose a piece, and the game is just a draw. So that's one idea. The other idea is that if we take with the knight, well, the king still comes in, king to b2, and he's threatening to get a queen, and we have no way to stop it. The best we can do is sacrifice our knight for the queen, and it's also a draw. So that's very clever of Black. So you might be thinking, well, if we can't take the pawn, what can we do? So if you'd like to pause, what do you think we should play? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is king to e3. And you're probably thinking, wait a second, Nelson. So we're going to ignore this pawn. We're going to let Black push it and have potentially two options of getting a queen. Why would we do that? Well, why don't you guys pause and you tell me, why would we do this? What's White's next move? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is knight to a2, checkmate. And that is not a checkmate that you see very often, but you can see now the point of bringing the king over was to control these squares. We have the bishop, we have the knight, and we let black push both of these pawns down here, but we checkmate them before they get a queen. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. When I was looking at this move was a total shock to me, completely caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to end in checkmate. I was convinced we had to somehow capture or blockade the pawns. And yet, here you go, the only way to win that position. Have fun with that one, guys, and I'll see you next time. As always, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.